You're listening to the Walmart Experts Podcast, where we tackle the essentials from boosting visibility to maximizing sales strategies, all designed to optimize your Walmart marketplace presence. Tune in for expert advice and actionable insights too.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and this episode is part two of a Winning on Walmart, Understanding the Walmart Ecosystem, kind of back-to-back podcasts that we're doing here. And for those of you, if you didn't listen to the first one, feel free to go back, take a listen. It's kind of, the back end, what the Walmart ecosystem looks like and what you should be thinking about. And this one, we're going to kind of dive into the advertising side of things. And again, back is Michael Lebhar from SellCord. They are, well known across the industry as being a fully focused Walmart agency and just helping tons of brands win in the Walmart.com ecosystem across the board. But Michael, you'll do a much better job. I can kick it over to you again. If you want to do, real quick intro yourself and SellCord, that'd be awesome. And then let's dive into Walmart advertising.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. I'm Michael. I'm the founder of SellCord. We're a Walmart agency. So we exclusively focus on Walmart. A lot of us have been, selling on other channels previously, a lot of the founding team and a lot of our team, and kind of noticed that like how quickly Walmart's growing. There's so much opportunity with Walmart, but there just really isn't enough understanding of all the nuances with Walmart, and by like properly addressing all the nuances and really having Walmart tailored strategies and approaches, we've been able to have a lot of success. So we manage hundreds of brands on the platform. We're one of Walmart's approved agency partners, as well as a software solution partner. So we have services as well as products to help brands launch on Walmart.com, scale on Walmart.com, manage your advertising, etc. We're very focused on like full funnel strategy, so really understanding the different pieces to the puzzle and making, crafting the best strategies based on that. So that's why I think this conversation is going to be interesting, because there's so much to talk about Walmart advertising, but it's a lot about how the different pieces connect and how to properly approach it.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's it. And where I want to start is talking to brands. I'm amazed at, if you talk to them about Amazon advertising and how they're approaching it. Everybody starts first with everything on the back end, making sure you have it right and the inventory is there, and they spend inordinate amounts of time making sure, especially if it's a new item launch, the new item setup form is filled out correctly, everything is perfect. The SEO, the work that goes into the bullet points, the title, the A+ detail page, like all of this work goes into it before they even pull the lever on Amazon advertising. And then they pull that lever. And then they look at Walmart and they're like, oh yeah, we've been in Walmart for 15 years. Just pull the lever and get going. It's like,
yep, exactly.
Then it doesn't work. And then they're like disgruntled, like Walmart can't figure it out. And it was just interesting. It was something that, it was occurring to me like last week when we were talking. That's not right. Like there's a different approach. It's so before we jump into, and I do want to get into, Walmart Connect, who should advertise, who shouldn't, if you're being leveraged to spend there, how you should think about that. I want to get into all of that. But first, like how often do you see brands missing that in the front end of Walmart, and how different is it from the Amazon space?
Yeah, I think you see it all the time with Walmart, which is so interesting. I think with Walmart, what's really interesting is that for businesses who have been traditionally, Walmart's been a big part of their business, they're having a hard time kind of really putting that investment forward and then treating it in sort of say the right way and spending properly. For the businesses who are kind of newer to .com and Walmart.com and established on other channels, they have like the real want to spend with Walmart Connect, because they understand, how much advertising, affects, so to say, their business on Amazon and how crucial it is. So they want to kind of spend a lot on Walmart Connect and leverage Walmart advertising properly, but they just don't know how to do it They just don't pull all the right levers. So either they're not able to spend efficiently, or they're not even able to spend. That's a lot of things we'll kind of dive into. So we're seeing it on kind of both sides of the equation, like some challenges there.
I mean, I totally see it. And it's just kind of that emphasis to listeners out there, like tackle Walmart with the same level of detail in your launching advertising as you do Amazon. But let's pull apart, like, do you want to kind of break down, Walmart's advertising platform as a whole, different placements that are out there, and then we can kind of say, hey, what brands does this make sense for? Which ones doesn't it? Different strategies across the board. That'd be fun. I think that'd be a cool conversation.
Perfect. Let's start there. So Walmart Connect, as most people know, is of the U.S. advertising arm of Walmart, right? So it's Walmart's U.S. advertising entity. So all advertising on Walmart.com is handled through Walmart Connect. It's technically a separate entity, but it's part of Walmart. So you'll see there's some differences, but it's they do a good job at integrating it pretty well. So now there's important things to understand. Number one, there's 1P, 3P. Walmart Connect is for both 1P brands and 3P brands. Now, the types of placements they have is expanding really rapidly. But for a while, before Marketplace has really started taking off, a big part of Walmart Connect was mostly managed service, right? So you as a brand are in store, online. Walmart Connect your buyer will tell you have to spend X amount with Walmart Connect. You enroll in their managed services. It has a minimum of X amount, and you spend with them. That's kind of how it was kind of traditionally and for a while. Now it's becoming much more of a self-service platform, right? So for both 1P and 3P brands. Obviously, there's still a lot of the managed service offerings that they have for the larger brands, and but we're seeing a lot of the self-service things be a lot more efficient. So a lot of the spend, a lot of people are leaning a lot more into the 3P things.
Yeah,
the self-serve.
Yeah, really quick on the self-serve versus Walmart managed. How do you compare that to like the Amazon space? Because Amazon will help you manage ads, but I know a lot of people just pull out of that and they go with an Amazon focused agency, or they have their own internal and they're using an ad tech, whether that's who's ever out there, Sky, PackView, Perpetua, Trellis, whatever it might be. Like, do you tell brands to go all in if Walmart's offering those managed services, or is it better to kind of yank it out and be in control of your own destiny?
So definitely better to be in control of your own. I think the interesting thing about managed service is that a lot of the placements were only available through managed service. So that's why it made sense in a lot of ways. So display, for example, until recently was only available through managed service and through minimums. Now they just launched display self-serve, for example, which there's no minimums and you can run it yourself. So I would say now there still is certain display campaigns through managed that you have they have more access to more audience insights, more detailed targeting and things like that. So if you're spending a ton of money with Connect, right? So let's say it's over $1 million a month, then there is obviously it could make sense for a percentage of that to go to managed service for these other placements where you wouldn't have access to. But from a performance basis, self-serve is the way to go. You could scale it extremely quickly, you could scale it down extremely quickly, you could try to be really efficient with those ad dollars. So we've seen it as I think what's really important with Walmart Connect is it's extremely powerful product. There's extremely powerful placements, pretty low competition compared to other ad platforms just because it's still pretty new. But your success on the platform is going to be tied to a lot of your strategy and what you're using it for and what your approach is, right? So I think in regards to what the placements are, as a general placements, there's the sponsor product placements where you're going on search results, and you see sponsored, similar to Amazon, for example. What's really interesting about Walmart is on a lot of devices, if you go on Walmart.com and you just search, you'll actually see the only thing that shows above the fold before you scroll down is four items, just because there's sometimes banners and things, and those are only sponsor placements. A lot of times these really big, or we have some of these brands that have been with Walmart forever, and their items were always top, right? So they never had to kind of spend, and now they're realizing nobody even sees their items because these new aggressive marketplace sellers are just bidding for those kind of top spots. So that's obviously one big placement. Another placement is at the next to the buy box placement. So next to if somebody's searching on an item, next to the buy box, they'll show another item. Those are great, to target your competitors. Again, you can't do item targeting like Walmart, like Amazon has, but they're launching all these things. So that's another placement. Walmart just launched video ads, for example. So, you know, it was in beta for a while. It just launched out of beta. So they're moving really quick with things like that. Display on platform and off platform. We've just ran display for a brand that had insanely good results. So there's those placements as well, whether you're running it on Walmart.com, you know, banners on the side, whatever, or on off platform sites. You could do that as well. So all that's handled kind of through Walmart Connect. So there's a lot of those different placements. There's carousel placements. I think what's really important is understanding, like, what's your goal with Walmart Connect? What's your goal with Walmart? Once you understand what your goal with Walmart is, then how you can leverage Walmart Connect to get there is going to be really important. And then based on that, it's going to be like, what types of Walmart Connect offerings do you use to get there? And here's a great example, right? We have a brand that we're working with that's in stores, but they want to get new items into stores, right? And let's say their pitch is in, you know, I think their pitch is in, like, let's say 3 months, right? So they know they could go into their meeting with a really nice presentation and all this kind of talk, and hopefully they could get in. But they know that if their launch item on .com prove really strong performance for 3 months, and they go into the meeting and be like, here's the sales for this item, it'll help them get that item into stores. So now what's the easiest way to get there? Walmart Connect is the fastest scalable way to kind of show that increase in performance, that increase in organic rank and all that. So now they, you know, so there's, for that, they might go really aggressive with a lot of different placements because they just want to drive as much sales as possible, right? For other brands, their goal might be, you know, they want to build a strong .com profitable strategy. So for there's different placements that are much more profitable than other placements, and you might want to focus on much more lower funnel stuff, right? You're not going to want to do display. You're probably going to want to do much more of pay-per-click on, you know, sponsored product placement. So you know, I think it's just really important to understand within the Walmart ecosystem, because there's so many different facets of Walmart. And that's when we work with brands, it's like a lot about understanding that, and then the different ways to leverage different programs within Walmart to tie in well. And I think it's just what we see all the time is that it's not, and that's why it's so important, because it's not just Walmart Connect. Like, you can't just run Walmart ads and be successful. It's so tied to how your catalog set up, the ecosystem in general. There's something called ad relevancy, which we'll dive into. So there's a lot of different factors that influence if your advertising is going to be really successful. And we see all the time, it's like advertising or marketing teams are running Walmart Connect, or they're not having success, and then they're working tirelessly to try to figure out why, but they're not understanding that it's tied to a lot of other reasons why that's not working. And if they're just working on the advertising, a lot of times they won't be successful. So that, long story short, like, I think it's a lot about understanding the ecosystem so you could pull the right levers.
But what about the brands that, you know, are there any that is not worth advertising? That's what always comes up. Like, it used to be, you know, if you weren't on a typical grocery run, like, it was hard to make anything work, right, on Walmart.com. You know, maybe there's some everyday commodities that pop up, you know, socks, underwear, t-shirts, but it seemed like for the longest time, if you weren't in a typical grocery run, it was just hard to win. Like, are there any, like, where do you kind of draw the line? Is there anybody that it doesn't make sense for? Like, do you see any categories that just historically just can't convert a ton?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting is there's the categories that so like consumables, I think, is where you're gonna have the hardest time, right? Even though Walmart's grocery business is so big and this and that, I think it really depends, right? With consumables in general, just because people are willing to spend more, brands are willing to spend more. So there's a few reasons. Let me back up for a second. Within consumables, there's a lot of really big players. So for example, we'll dive in a little more detail, right? Within supplements, there's a lot of really big players. Now, specifically for supplements, the .com business is much smaller percentage-wise compared to the in-store business, right? So you're working with the Procter & Gamble's, Unilever's that have commitments of that they need to spend on .com, and they want to own that .com shelf. So they're going to spend like ungodly amounts of money on those .com placements. Now, as a challenge, if you're an up and coming or a newer supplement brand, right, or even if you're pretty established but just not on that level, the challenges you're going to come across with is the bids on those keywords are extremely high, right? And then it's going to be really hard to kind of win all those, and the customer shopping there are shopping for especially with Walmart, they're shopping specifically for those brands. They're not exploring new brands a lot. They're not discovering new brands a lot, specifically in those kind of consumable categories. So it's going to be very, very difficult there. I still usually always think it's important to have a strategy there, because there's still a lot of, within those categories, there's still a ton of opportunity, because the way a lot of the larger brands are bidding is a lot of times way less of a tailored strategy. So there's a lot of keywords. Sometimes they'll find really good opportunities, but it's just not going to be scalable, extremely scalable, so to say. In other categories, I feel like, for example, in home, we see like insanely good performances, because the cost of the clicks are much more relatively affordable, right? For a $200 bed compared to a $10 supplement that people are spending $3 a click on. It's a lot of times you'll see comparable clicks in, for example, in home, which obviously your average order values are much more, and people are less fixated a lot of times on the brands that they're purchasing. So I think there's really, it depends a little bit on the category, and each category has different kind of approaches. When we work with the really large, national, with the really large brands, like it's a different strategy, because there it's like, we work with some brands that have been doing well into the 100 millions a year with Walmart, and now there's challenges. Like there's a lot of new competition, and marketplace sellers are taking all their sales, right? Well, not all their sales, but a good chunk of their sales. How do you use Connect to combat that? How do you use Connect? A lot of them have promotional strategies in place, but they don't have solidified approaches for Connect, and their competitors do, right? So it's like, how do you kind of tailor that? So almost all brands, there is a Connect strategy that is crucial. For some brands, it's a lot more crucial than others. And the ways how to leverage it is obviously is different for different brands. But we see like on one side, brands that like they're losing a lot of sales to these marketplace sellers who have a really strong Connect strategy. So how do we, big national brands, how do we create really strong strategies to help them kind of really navigate that environment, build a strong Connect strategy where they could be as tactical, if not more tactical, and leverage a lot of what they have, which they have a lot of much stronger fundamentals within Walmart than some of these marketplace sellers, like to really dominate a lot of those sales. On the other side, though, it's like, how do we, marketplace sellers, like how do they get into the market and build a strategy where they could take some of the market share, specifically with a very strong, advertising strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with Walmart, kind of opening up that third-party marketplace. I don't think a lot of brands per se are super excited about it.
Yep.
With the increased competition, right? It was the customer acquisition costs, paid media costs were high enough already, and now there's all this different, competition that's out there. Do you see that, that number of third-party sellers is just going to continue to skyrocket?
Yeah, so I think it's going to continue to skyrocket, and it's going to be a lot more Chinese sellers. So you're going to be competing with a lot of very, very tactical, aggressive sellers who are willing to spend a strong portion of their revenue on advertising. And it's going to keep growing a lot. I'm saying there's over 100,000 sellers now, but it's, I would be surprised if it's not double within like 2 years, potentially even much more than that. So it's going to grow a lot more. And again, I think a lot of the power, so to say, a lot of the placement is going to go to the marketplace teams a lot. So for example, like this Black Friday, we saw that a lot of the sponsored mosaic placements are called, a lot of those placements that are, the deal shelves and all that, like a lot of it was marketplace items the marketplace teams had. So traditionally, like your DSV buyer and your had a lot more, there was a lot more that could be done on that side. Now a lot of it's taken with the marketplace team. So it's really important to if you're just doing 1P, to still have a really good understanding of how marketplace fits into the mix and how it's competing. But if you're doing both, like really important to have a strong strategy with both, because again, there's a ton of advantages with 1P as well. It's just about understanding, the different, the increased competition and what that means, because it's really easy to kind of lose sight of that when you have a strong Walmart business, and then it slowly eats away at your sales on .com, then eats away at a lot of your performance. And now you have a lot of, you're competing with a lot of newer people, as opposed to like yes, there's increased competition now, but you could build a really strong strategy where leverage what you have to, outsell a lot of these newer brands and, outrank and keep your share of voice, if not grow your share of voice. So, because a lot of the other 1P vendors will be losing their share of voice.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see if that it kind of erodes any of the, relationships that are out there that Walmart has with brands, because that was something that, people complain about with Amazon is there's no real relationship there, right? There's a vendor manager and you love your vendor manager. They're awesome. And then they're, gone in 9 to 12 months and you're on to the next one. Maybe you have, an SVS. I'm old school, so I always call them SVS, no matter they've changed the acronym like 8 times. But that was originally pitched as a replacement for when your vendor manager left, and then that didn't necessarily come to fruition. And so, with Walmart opening up the marketplace to so many new third-party sellers, which we know drives brands bonkers, if there's going to start being some angst, right? Because if I'm on the 1P side and I'm being asked to commit dollars, right, and month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, those dollars go, nowhere near as far as they did at the beginning of the year, because there's so many more people in there bidding on search terms. And like you said, like these third-party sellers that are jumping on, in a lot of cases, are willing to spend huge sums of money and go negative for 6 to 8 months to get to the top of search rank, and then just coast once they're at the top. And then they get into a point where they're getting a return on their investment. And brands, especially larger brands, they can't do that. They could, but nobody at that senior level is going to sign off on 10 hero products going negative for 6 to 9 months. It's just, I don't see it happening.
Exactly. Yep. I think we see that a lot. I think though, it's like, what's interesting is, and I'm speaking to a lot of brands about this as we develop different strategies, is that, now there's so much more sellers, cost per clicks are higher, etc. So it's like, in one way, you could look at it as like your dollar doesn't go as far, but in other regard, it's like there's obviously much more increased traffic on Walmart.com. There's increased placements that Walmart Connect has now, right? So there's a lot more placements and a lot more sales you could drive from a lot of these placements, right? So as a vendor, as a 1P vendor, like if you had a lot of like your hero products, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a little bit negative. And for in most regard, there's gonna be some negative outcome from so many sellers coming on board. But what's really cool is for your larger assortment of products and your items that traditionally have not done as well, there's a lot of opportunity there, because you could pull so many levers yourself at pretty low cost to get those items ranked, to get those items better positioning when your buyer might have not focused on those items and might have not given love to those items. Like you could do it internally, and if you're tactical enough, and that's like the transition some of these brands have to make. If you're tactical enough, you could drive a lot of sales through that assortment, right? And that assortment that traditionally might have not done as well, or isn't a hero product that was always ranked kind of number one. So I literally was just talking about this with a brand yesterday, a really large global brand that everybody knows. And it's just like that same exact issue where it's like they have one item that like basically everybody has in their house. And like that item is, was always ranked on top of search. And, for that item, like there's a lot of competitors now, because even though their item's ranked on the top, like the sponsor placements, and they're not going to spend all their money on all those sponsor placements, but it's like they have thousands of other items, and a lot of that other assortment that wasn't getting as much love now is we're able to pull a lot more levers to do better with those items. So there's trade-offs, but it's I think in the long run, it's just there's so many levers you could pull if you have a strong connect and marketplace strategy.
Is there like a standard like percentage of sales? Okay, we know Walmart jumps in and says, hey, for certain 1P, like here is your required spend. But outside of that, is there like a typical percentage of sales that people should think about reinvesting back into the platform?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the category and your goals, which is like not a clear answer that obviously a lot of people like, but it depends a lot on your goals and thing. A lot of times for certain items, it'll be a much higher percentage for a certain period of time. For example, like getting up to tax time, right? We work with some vendors in the home space, right? Like a lot of people have more money around, when they get their tax refunds and a lot of that. If you're in the consumable space, like I wouldn't say that's where you prepare a lot for. In home space, you prepare a lot for that. So for the month or two prior to that, like that's where you invest much more heavily, because the costs aren't as expensive, the cost per clicks, but it's like you could prepare your listings and then you're ranked really high for when tax time comes, and you could even scale down your ad dollars around that time, because you're already ranked really high organically. So I think it's very dynamic, and you have to be really dynamic to have a really strong strategy. And it has to be by item, by subcategory. A lot of times, if you're losing share of voice in certain categories, it's gonna be higher percentages there. So that's why it depends on a lot of different factors. On Amazon, people work with way higher numbers than what I've seen people percentage wise with what people have to do on Walmart, just because people traditionally didn't have to spend as much with Connect. But it's like a lot of people look at it, it's like Walmart's asking me to spend this amount and they want me to spend this amount. It's like that could be turn out really profitable for you. You just have to approach it properly. So I think what the one number I could give to put in mind is, if you're a 1P supplier, is know that the marketplace sellers that are successful on thing are spending like upwards of 10% of their sales on Connect, right? So if you're want to compete with those sellers, I'm not saying you have to spend that because you have a strong 1P business. So a lot of these people are spending 1, 2, 3% and they're still doing well. But know that you're competing with people that are spending 10 to sometimes 20%, just when they're cruising. Never mind, like when they're going really aggressive, it's way higher than that. But just when they're cruising, they're spending at least 10%. So that's the kind of competition you're dealing with. And as marketplaces, that's what I suggest them to do, is like to be spending that 10 to 20%. Just because there's so much opportunity once you get those placements, like you said, and then they could cruise for a while and give certain bumps here and there. But
yeah, what other things should we tackle? I want to keep peeling back the onion. I want to unpack this thing, but it's probably going to take multiple more conversations. Yeah. But I agree from the Walmart standpoint that over-indexing right now, it's kind of like the AMS days back in the day on Amazon, where you get inordinate gains out of what you're pouring in. But you might not realize that for 3, 6, 9 months, or maybe even a year, but all of a sudden you're at the top and then things are just cruising. But what other things should we think about when it comes to Walmart Connect and advertising?
Yeah. So I think what's really important is ad relevancy for Walmart. It plays a really big role, right? So I see this all the time, right? It's like, oh, I turn on a campaign, I put like a $2,000 budget on it, it's just not spending, right? And that happens all the time. Walmart has something called ad relevancy, which they want to know that your product, for the search terms you're bidding on, and for search terms that items are showing, that customers are resonating with it. So you have to do certain things to build relevancy with Walmart so that they let you spend, so to say. And it sounds kind of crazy, but that's kind of how it works. It's like, so the few things that tie into that is like, how good is your listing quality score? How well is your listing optimized, right? Like that's going to play into it. How good is your conversion rates on your listing? Now, once you're starting to spend, how good are your ads doing? Are they, are you getting a lot of clicks on them, right? Because if Walmart's, it's not an impression-based model, right? So if it's most of ads are click-based, right? So if Walmart's showing your ads a lot and people aren't clicking on it, your relevancy is not going to be as good, and then they're going to give you less placements and less things. So I think what's really important is all those levers play a really big role. And then once you start hitting, you have those fundamentals down right, and you were starting to convert and you're hitting momentum, then you'll start seeing like you'll have lower cost of clicks than other people in the space and things like that, because you're able to show up for a lot more search terms, and you're able to have Walmart will give you're able to win placements, even though it's a second price auction and it works on the bidder. But like we see this all the time, where brands who have and certain campaigns that have more momentum behind them will just be able to perform a lot better. So I think it's really important to kind of understand ad relevancy and how big of a role that plays in with advertising on Walmart. And that, understanding that just because your ads aren't spending the way you want them to or performing the way you want them to, It's not always about just adjusting your bids or spending more. Sometimes that won't do anything. It's a lot about understanding some of the other key aspects to ad relevancy.
Yeah, so you guys are actively managing a ton of ads today. I mean, what's the advice for people that want to get started? Like, can they just do this on their own? Do they have to reach out to an agency? Do they need, some kind of ad tech? Like, what do you recommend?
So great question. I know I'm probably biased in this, but I would say it depends on your goal. So I would say in most scenarios, it makes sense to leverage an agency for Walmart Connect, just because there's so many. And the way I look at it is like this: some agencies are usually going to charge you a percentage of of what they spend, right? Let's say they charge you, let's say, just put a number out there, let's say it's 5%. Like, you want to work with an agency that's at least giving you probably like a 20% added return on kind of what you would have done it internally. And I think any competent agency in the kind of the space will be able to provide those type of results if you're spending enough, because there are so many levers that could be pulled with Walmart. And just even if you have somebody full time on it, just because they're just focused on that, like, they'll be able to do a good job in some regards, but it's very hard to really pull all the levers unless there's a lot of resources that go behind us. For example, for us, there's an advertising manager in our team has support of 10 to 15 other people that they work with to tune different types of things that make a difference for overall, so to say, ad relevancy. So I think what's really important with Walmart Connect is, like, with agencies, obviously people like us, when we work with hundreds of brands, you see and spend millions and millions of dollars a month with Walmart Connect. You see what works best, you see what doesn't, you see what makes the dollars go the furthest. So if you're able to then transfer that over for the brands and they get that extra added return, then it scales much further. So I think for that regard, it's worth it. But I think where where there's a lot more where there's a lot of value with kind of working with partners in this space specifically is to a lot on the strategy side as well. I think it's really important to work with partners to kind of craft that strategy of, like, how to leverage Walmart Connect, how it's not just about spending the most as you can and just having the best, so to say, return on the spend. It's much more about, like, diving into, like, what are you trying to get out of it? And then based on what you're trying to get out of it, and what you're getting out of it might not be on an account level. There could be, for these items, this is what my goals are. For this subcategory, this is what my goals are. For if you have a few brands, like, for this brand, this is what we're trying to get out, and the different strategies based on that. I think internally it's kind of challenging for a lot of people to do that. So I think that's really important. On how brands can kind of leverage agencies. I think it's much more about agencies than ad tech in this space, because it's a lot more of the strategy, like we said, but also a lot of picking up on a lot of the nuances and addressing a lot of the nuances within the advertising, but also within the catalog to address that. So ad tech helps kind of manage on a bigger scale, but it's less like with Amazon, where it's like much more mature and it's just about how the best rules to kind of adjust your advertising. So that's why just in our experience, that's why that's key.
Awesome. What are you most excited about over, like, the next year with Walmart as a whole? And,
Yeah,
like,
so
love any, like, keen insights there. I mean, I'm excited for it to grow as a platform and be a bigger competitor to Amazon. And I know Amazon's way, way, way out in front, but still, there's a lot to be gained by being on Walmart.com. So would love to hear your thoughts. What are you excited about?
yeah, a few things. So number one, I think it's really cool how they're doing a lot of efforts to streamline the 1P, 3P businesses and have more crossover between the businesses and different ways to leverage each. So I think that's pretty cool, and it's going to be very exciting there. I think there's just more partner services products in the space. They're going to be evolving really quickly, which is cool. I think it puts us on our toes. There's so much to evolve and so much to build, to really support brands as they really grow. I think just the aggressive approach that Walmart's taking for how quick and how much of the market share they want to take, I think is just really exciting, because they're launching new products literally all the time. And by products, I mean just different services to help sellers. So that's just really exciting, and just how that kind of scales. So yeah, we saw, last year was Walmart's first Walmart seller event, like seller conference, for marketplace, and like everybody at Walmart was there, and it's like you could see how seriously they're taking this kind of initiative. And like you see all the changes that have been happening throughout the year. It's just been crazy. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited to kind of see how a lot of 1P brands really take the hard effort of like adopting a marketplace strategy, being really proactive about it. So that's going to be really fun. And it's very challenging for, strong 1P brands to build a strong marketplace strategy that fits in well with their greater businesses. And I get that's really challenging, but it's also really exciting. So
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me? I mean, I've been picking your brain this whole time. Thank you for that. Like, these are things that I get asked by the brands I'm chatting with on a routine basis. But more than happy to kick it your way. Any questions you have for me?
yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to kind of understand from your perspective is like how, you're speaking to so many brands, like how brands are really thinking about, especially 1P brands, how they're really thinking about, leveraging a channel that traditionally has been for them 1P, but then, addressing it as a hybrid with 3P, and how a lot of them, like, because I think because of Amazon, a lot of these brands already started adopting somewhat of a 3P strategy, even though a lot of them are 1P with Amazon, like how they're really thinking of that. And then, how they're, I think it's like, is it really difficult for some of these larger brands to kind of integrate marketplace strategies into their greater businesses, and how that's kind of gonna roll out?
Yeah. So a couple things there. One is, the 1P, 3P side. Well, a lot of the larger players on Amazon are just told you can't go 3P. So a bunch of brands right now, they have items getting crapped out on Amazon. That's, for those of you, can't realize a profit. Amazon craps them out. And they're like, hey, can we take these 3P? And Amazon's like, no, you can't. Find a way to rebundle them or something like that and get them back to us on the 1P side. And brands are just like scratching their heads. Like, why won't you let us just go make these profitable on our own? And it's just that cut and dry, the non-relationship. It's just how Amazon's run, and that's what it's going to be. So then you go over to the Walmart side, and you've got people who have always been 1P on Walmart, and Walmart's saying, no, take we don't want your whole catalog. We can't have it. There's not enough shelf space for us to take everybody's, but we know you've got 18 other products, 50 other products that people want, would buy, and we'd love to get a cut of it. So put it on the marketplace. And brands are like, wait, what? This is awesome. The issue that they run into, though, is always on the how do you relieve inventory? A lot of the larger companies as a whole are still relieving inventory at a case level. And so to go in and update your ERP system in financials to individually relieve inventory unit by unit is it's doable. It's not like it's hard. It just takes a while, and then it introduces other issues like, where does that inventory sit then? Because most places have a FIFO, right, a system of inventory management, and now, right, the one that's there has one unit taken out of it. So then if I ship a case, I have to grab the rest of this one and one out of the next one. That's how the ERP system sees it. So then I have to have a specific warehouse. Now it's probably a virtual warehouse, but you just get to these additional complexities when at the end of the day, you also have the back end of the shipping teams and logistics. Man, if you give them the choice of putting a pallet on a truck to Walmart, or individually grabbing one unit sold on Walmart.com and trying to get into a box, individually packing and shipping and getting a label, they pick the pallet all day, every day, right? They're being measured on-time compliance on a percentage basis of units. And so they're doing that all day, every day. So you have the sales team like excited about the opportunity, and you have everything on the back end going, stop.
Yep, exactly. Yep, that's what
and that's where you get the third parties that come in and they buy wholesale, and then they'll resell for you, right, on these different marketplaces. There's some really great ones out there, and then there's 2,000, 3,000 really, really bad ones. And so
Yep.
How you walk down that strategy is something that I have conversations on a weekly basis of what does that look like? And who should I partner with at the end of the day? And that depends on what your route is. It's different if you're updating ERP and you putting in virtual warehouses, then, hey, we're going to go with a, trusted third-party reseller. So, yeah. Crazy.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, my hope is that most of them get it figured out and they can load all their products on the marketplace and make it as legitimate as possible and make it easier for me and give me an alternative to Amazon right now. So,
yep, definitely.
So that was kind of long-winded, but it's very relevant. It's obviously for you as well. If it's coming up, you're like, hey, I got to ask one thing. This is it. So, but yeah, I think we're pretty much right here at time. Everybody, again, Michael Lebhar from SellCord, reach out to him on LinkedIn. If you need help in this space, they're fantastic. They come highly recommended within the network, highly knowledgeable people and just all around great people. They're willing to jump on the phone, and just kind of give you some strategic advice, but also if you need their help, worth bringing them on board as well. But thanks again, Michael, for your time today and for last week's time as well. But with this, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody for tuning in.